We're at the Symphony. We're on the second floor of Heinz Hall. I'm Jim Cunningham, and it is a real joy to have Christian Tetzlaff and Maestro David Afkham making his debut with the Pittsburgh Symphony this weekend. It's very exciting. It's freut mich sehr to see you both. So wonderful to have you returning and to have you here for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you. It's wonderful. It's a great pleasure and honor to have the debut now with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. With some delay due to COVID, but therefore the pleasure and the honor is much higher to be back, or not back, but for the first time now, and to have the opportunity to play this wonderful program with the Pittsburgh Symphony and with Christian. So it's a great pleasure.
Have you worked together before?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Where and when? Do you remember?
In Madrid, in Berlin. What else did we do?
Yeah, some other places as well, but we have played many times, many different concerts, but the Shostakovich I think we have never done before. So it's a great joy and a great discovery for new things, new colors, new expressions. I'm very looking forward to the concerts.
Shostakovich, first violin concerto with you, Brahms' first symphony, Coriolan Overture. Why did you? Sorry?
A laugh a minute, I'd say.
Coriolan. Yeah, here we have Beethoven. Do you think was he seeing himself in the figure of Coriolan? Coriolan, it's a tragic ending, yes?
Well, the whole program, the entire program is quite a dark program. To be honest, we have both the opening piece, C minor, and also the C minor of the Brahms First Symphony. So there's a tragic hero going through the whole program. But with a lighter and sunnier per asperat astra ending in the Brahms Symphony. Well, coming back to your question, I don't know if Beethoven saw himself in the figure of Coriolanus. I think for me that's not so important. It is what is important for that overture is this enormous energy, this enormous drama that is in this overture. I explained a little bit to the orchestra, please, that let's not play notes. It should be existential. It's about life and death. I explained that we're having Ukrainian family living with us at this moment since the war started, a young woman with her little boy and her mother-in-law. And the news that they receive every day from the war is quite shocking and sometimes, of course, much more present than what you read in the news. And it's about life and death. And to play now a piece where it is also about life and death, this existential view on music, it's a completely new vision and new view on that piece. So and that's also a masterpiece because you can relate always to the present day, to our time. And when I said that, and the orchestra understood immediately and played completely different. So yes, it's very dark, it's very tragic, but also just wonderful.
How did you wind up helping a family?
Well, my wife is Christiane Karg, is a soprano, is a singer, and they gave at the beginning, right after the war started, a benefits concert in Vienna, and her colleague, the mezzo, she was from Ukraine, living in Austria, and of course she had many friends who asked her, do you know someone outside of Ukraine who could we go to, because we would like to leave the country if we know where to go to. And so she asked us, and of course she said immediately, yes, please come. And that was this little family. And yes, very intense moments, very intense times, and the how to say, the approach of music, the music making is changing in a way. It becomes everything more real, more honest, and the question why we are doing things becomes much more urgent. And so yeah, I tried to transmit that at least in the Coriolanus to the musicians, and they understood and they took it on board, and I'm very grateful for that.
Have you met our Marta Krachkovsky, who is from Ukraine? She's one of our violinists. Very tough time for her family.
She came to me and said very warm-hearted thank you. But for me, this is not a question of thanking. For me, I see that as a normal. A gesture, not gesture, but it's a mindset. That's the only thing that we can help can do in this moment. Helping the people, helping every individual. So that's the situation.
Shostakovich won Stalin and terror, and he put the piece away for a number of years, afraid that maybe the reaction would not be good. Have you played it a lot?
I've played it a lot, and it is strange that we talk now about the Coriolan, the Ukrainian angle of fighting for life or death. And this now is from the inside. This is from a man who was fearing for, I would say, 30 years, 35 years of his life to be sent to Siberia for writing the wrong music, making the wrong comment. And this situation, of course, has always been never completely solved in my eyes in Russia, but it's been better in between. And we have come full circle. Anybody who says something wrong, who uses in Ukrainian folk songs, will or might end up in Siberia. Exactly the situation Shostakovich was writing in against. And I also said to the orchestra, I don't want to politicize him, because he was a man who in himself maybe had enough of the torment and the wish for expression of also dark and dangerous things. But it was a big part of his life that was dealing with simply somebody like Stalin, which no musician should have to do. But they have to nowadays. I saw, incredibly, Alexei Lyubimov, a piano player. He played a piece by a Ukrainian composer in Moscow, and the police came in and took him away. So this is the same situation 70 years later. So the music talks about many things. It talks also about beauty and himself, I guess, but this is a background that we can ignore even less than normally. And besides that, it is an amazing piece of diversity and of also a wild joy in expressing something fast and violent, and there is a strange beauty to the first movement, which is almost my favorite movement, a character that has maybe some relation to some Mahler movements, but it's unique in its tenderness and fragility. So there's, for a violinist, there's emotionally many, many different things to say, and as a violinist also it is a joy, because it is so physical, this piece.
Maestro?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Christian. The first movement, Nocturne, is more atmosphere than music. It's a perspective to the inside of a soul, I sometimes feel. Then we have a second crazy movement, Scherzo, which is like a devil's dance sometimes, very grotesque, caricature, ironic, laughing about himself sometimes, or about someone or something, but it's already, in a way crazy in the expression. Then we, of course, a beautiful Passacaglia, which is for me sometimes like a requiem. Wonderful musicians of the Pittsburgh playing this chorale that goes through the whole movement, and then ends really like in the blending of sound and silence, then to the cadenza, and then from that we go to the burlesque. No, I absolutely agree with Christian. It's you find everything in that concerto. Every expression, every color, every note has a meaning, and therefore it's true in a way. It's not about playing beautiful, or no. The truth is inside, and that makes it beautiful.
And Shostakovich even put his initials in, yes? DSCH. Is he mocking the violinist? What is he doing with that?
Funny, because in this piece he writes D sharp, E, C sharp, B sharp, just everything transposed by half a note. I'd never found the da dee da da, which he so often uses in the real DSCH, which would be his name. But as every musician knows that it is his theme, he might put it in wrong, half note wrong, and we still recognize it.
And he really, for the violinist, you never get a break. This is a fantastic tour de force for you.
It is physically challenging in a good way. Yeah.
The cadenza, you have to keep plowing on.
Yeah.
And wow, what an ending. The spectacular boom ending, it just has it all.
Well, this, for me, it's exactly copied at a Tchaikovsky concerto, and there is not a joke, but there is some beautiful irony in it, because the Tchaikovsky last movement is really affirmative. You can say yes, but there is also something else in it. But it is a virtuoso concerto, and it ends triumphantly. And Shostakovich, in a broken piece, in the wrong century, he takes Tchaikovsky's ending, exactly the same, and the exactly starts the whole movement like that. So it's a far away copy of something which leads in a different way, but also incorporates the joy that's in there.
Amazing. Have you? There must be. I meant to check on my way down. Is there a David Oistrakh recording? Did he? And when you listen to it, what do you think?
Well, I'm maybe a bit too close to the piece. He plays beautifully and strongly and convincingly. He, for me, plays it way too beautiful. He also doesn't like pianissimo and piano too much, which is a big part of the first movement. There is a lot of confidence in the playing, which for me doesn't belong there. But of course he first performed it, so I can only rely on what I see from Shostakovich in the score, and that tells a very different story. He plays it fantastically, but I would not try to go that way.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to hear what you do with it. I'm sure it's going to be great fun. Any new recordings from you? You've been very generous for radio with recordings that we can play.
Yeah, lots of recordings, which is, of course, in Corona times. One was actually an extra recording. We did the Schubert string quintet, and now the Schubert piano trios will come out, and I recorded Brahms concerto coupled with Berg concerto, which will come out in August, and did the Sibelius and Beethoven together last year, so I'm doing a lot in that respect.
I look forward to
and
that.
The Brahms piano quartets also. Yeah.
Great. With?
This is with Lars Vogt and Tanja Tetzlaff, my sister, and Barbara Buntrock at the viola.
Great. Where did you do them?
I always do there is a fantastic little chamber music hall of the Radio Bremen, which is ideal and wonderful. Everything is done there, from the smaller stuff.
Yeah. And your summer, what are you going to be up to this summer?
I have 6 weeks off, like almost every year. I go to Provence, I go to Denmark, I go hiking in the Alps for a week. So I always, in Corona times, of course, I even didn't touch my fiddle for 2 months because there was no need. But
Great.
Don't get me wrong, I like it, nevertheless. Yeah.
Will you hear the Alphorn of Johannes Brahms in the First Symphony? Yes, we hear the Alphorn somewhere along the way.
Oh, we will hear it, yes. Hoch auf dem Berg, tief im Tal, grüß ich dich viel tausendmal. The famous, I would say, yes, I told the orchestra, one of the most beautiful love letters from Brahms to Clara Schumann. When he wrote this little tune on a little paper on the letter and sent it to Clara Schumann. Yeah, it's wonderful. Fantastic horn section, fantastic horn player. It's a great, great joy to listen that tune with this fantastic orchestra.
And the concertmaster has a wonderful solo. It's almost a concerto.
Yes, it's in the second movement we have a beautiful solo of the concertmaster, of the oboe, and again of the horn. And I see that kind of the magical, mysterious trio of Joachim Brahms and Clara Schumann, or Robert Schumann, whoever you'd like to take, but the kind of these three people coming together and talking and singing together, celebrating. That's a beautiful second movement ending where we have all these three solos coming together. Absolutely, a big contrast to the first movement, of course, where we start with this very dramatic opening, this pulsation, this pulse in the timpano. Well, where I find this, it's not a pulse of a human being; it's a pulse of our times, or maybe something above, but very dramatic, and then this very, very intense motive of the strings, the chromatic development, the chromatic movement, which every note has to be more intense than the note before, and this motive goes through the whole entire symphony. It's wonderfully written. It's a long first movement, beautiful colors, moments where music stops, and out of that we start to live again. A second movement, I just said, it's very beautiful, idyllic. The melos is flowing through. Third movement, I always find with Brahms that the second and third movements are like small diamonds, very precious, beautifully, but also sometimes very intimate, very something. The perspective goes to the inside of the soul. And the third movement is like a little pastoral, very, very beautiful. Grazioso he's writing, so we have to look for the colors rather than just for the music making. And then, of course, again, the big finale. So it's with the wonderful horn and alphorn melody and the chorale at the end, really, which is a triumph and celebration. So, no, I'm very grateful to that symphony. It means a lot to me. When I was... my instruments are violin and piano, and when I was starting playing, bigger stuff, I would say Brahms was one of these composers, which was from the beginning really at my side. And one of the first symphonies I ever conducted was Brahms' Third Symphony. So, kind of Brahms was always next to me, and I'm very grateful to do that symphony now with the Pittsburgh Symphony.
It's interesting you say that, because my first, I've been listening at home all my childhood, but the first time I knew that music can express almost anything, and also the horror of losing something or someone was the first piano concerto, the beginning of the D minor concerto, which scared me really strongly when I was 8 years old. But I was also drawn to it, and kind of from then on knew that making music that deals with great emotional expression is going to be what I'm going to do on whatever, in whichever way. And then I started playing orchestra all my youth, because there you get to these things. If you at 12 and play Tchaikovsky and Bruckner and Mahler, then you're deep into music, and then later more sophistication or whatever comes. But this there I know music can do a lot.
Yes.
Every great orchestra plays each piece of music with the appropriate style for the composer. But sometimes with Pittsburgh, because we had William Steinberg here for a quarter century, Fritz Reiner for a decade, Central European conductors, Maris Janssens, it's sometimes said that there's a darker, more European sound to the strings of the Pittsburgh Symphony. Do you hear that? Do you hear a Germanic influence in this orchestra? It's sometimes said this is an orchestra that plays German music with great flair.
I've been doing. I did Beethoven and Mendelssohn, now Shostakovich, and I thought there was flexibility in the orchestra, because to say this orchestra has this sound, I find that almost an insult, because I think we need to be completely different persons. Same with, especially with instrumentalists. If you say, "Oh, I recognize right away this sound," I say, "No, that's a bad sign. That's like you see an actor. It's the same guy. He played there. And I know him." You want the actor to be almost not recognizable. Of course, you see his nose and then you know. But it's better if you are so flexible that it at least takes a while. And I didn't. Today we talked about bow stroke and vibrato, and immediately we had a response of flexibility. So. I would stay away from saying this orchestra sounds like this or that.
Yeah.
I would add there is a strong personality in the orchestra, and they offer, if we just talk about the string sound, a wonderful string sound. There's a high quality of string playing. Yes, I agree with you that there is a darker sound. Yes, but at the same time, there's a very brilliant sound. So it's not necessarily only a Germanic, German heavy dark sound. No, as Christian is saying, there's a wonderful flexibility. We can go into all sorts of colors, and they react beautifully, and that's wonderful. And that's what music, I think, also asks for, and not just one way of playing, but so many different kind of, not just styles, but colors and ways and characters.
We had light blue at one moment. I remember.
We had
light blue.
We had a light blue, yes, of course, and the dark red. And no, but it's wonderful. The flexibility is very important, absolutely.
I know you must go, but we're meeting David for the first time. We must hear your story. Please, what should we know about Herr Afkham? What do you think he would not tell us himself?
Well, yeah, that I wouldn't tell you either. Nobody wants to know that. Absolutely not. But give a hint.
And
I want you to tell your story, but you're both from Germany, yes? Bavarian in your case.
Well, born in Freiburg im Breisgau, Black Forest, which is Baden-Württemberg, is next to Bavaria. But I live with my family now, after many years of Berlin, now in Bavaria, the hometown of my wife, which is near Würzburg, Nuremberg. So. And that area, south of Germany, yes, Bavaria.
In Freiburg, we have the cathedral, yes?
Oh, yes, we have the Münster, a lot of nature, university, many young people, wonderful Musikhochschule, the University of Music. We're very close to France and to Switzerland, so that's a wonderful, I would say, energy. My second language actually is French, so it's a wonderful part of Germany, and I'm very grateful. I grew up with I have three sisters and one brother, all older than me. My brother's viola player in the Berliner Philharmonic Orchestra, and my older sister's a violin player. The others are medical doctors, so it's medicine and music in my family. And I remember that every weekend we went up to the mountains, to Black Forest. So nature and family was something, and of course music was something that was very important in my youth. And I'm very, very grateful that I had this wonderful time in Freiburg, yes.
And how are things in Spain?
Well, yes. Well, it's there comes Christian.
Yeah. I've been playing with that orchestra a few times, and also a long time ago. And then I came. I came 4 years ago, and then I came this fall in November, and the development of that orchestra was sensational from before David and with David. So for me, this is there can be guest conductors who make a good splash somewhere and somewhere not, and somewhere yes. And but if a conductor makes a whole orchestra way better, that's what a Generalmusikdirektor is, and that's an important quality, because conductors go and orchestras stay, and they need to be, if they are guided to a better being, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's now almost 8 years. I will do 2 more seasons, so it will be 10, 11 years in total. Yes, of course, forming, building an orchestra, improving, it takes time. It's a long process, but also a beautiful process. I have to admit, there is also a generation change, or had been in the orchestra, so that of course has a strong effect on the development of an orchestra. But I think and that's something that I learned from my mentor Bernhard Haitink. Leading an orchestra from inside, it means that you listen to your musicians, that you start to form an orchestra from inside, that the idea of making chamber music, that it's not leading from outside, here's the one, here's the three. Of course, the musicians need that, but the connection in between the musicians, that they start to take the responsibility in music making, that is something that will stay in an orchestra, independent of who's standing in front of them. And that's a quality, I think, which is very, very important of an orchestra.
And the exact opposite also stays in the orchestra. And I know quite a few orchestras where they went often for these dictatorial conductors who only could be happy if everybody does exactly what he says. And that stays. Those orchestras take a long time till they come to a beautiful music making where everybody thinks, oh, I'm allowed to say what I feel, and not only through somebody else. So we live in glorious times, because now there is conductors that are so good that just their musical ability and their conducting ability is enough to make the orchestra happy to work with them, and not only because they are yelled at. So also for me, that's so much nicer, because those are conductors where the soloist says something to the conductor. I think the French horn is a bit too loud, and then the conductor is allowed to. Nowadays, I work also with an orchestra. If I'm there, I listen to the conductor listens to me, I talk to the musicians. If I have a suggestion about a shape or music, this is what normal families work like, that there's not one person who decides. It's or friendships, families, loves, all these things. They are children of freedom, and this is fantastic that many orchestras are getting to that point now.
Oh my, we must close, but I have to ask, since I have two great figures of Germanic music sitting at the table here. Thomas Mann in the Zauberberg tells us that the North Germans are very different from the Southern Germans, that the Bavarians are completely undisciplined and creative, and they drink wine excessively.
They drink
beer. So are these stereotypes, where do they come from? Is any of it true?
They are true, as the stereotypes are true and wrong at the same time. You have the same in America. You certainly will agree that people in Texas are different from people in Chicago. And it's a truth, but if you go to the individual, it's a lie, because there is always the opposite people also there. But statistically, there is a huge difference in the way one talks, one hugs, one interacts with other people. It's through social things, it's through religious things that things have developed in a different way. Catholic South in Germany, Protestantic North, completely different development. There's 1,000 factors, and they are true. They're just not true in the single case.
Yes, I agree with you. And the beauty is that when you make music, on the other hand, it's at the end. It's, of course, you bring in your personality, you bring in your character, your vision. It has to be. If not, you're not a conductor, not a soloist, whatever. You have to. But at the same time, it's the music making, the together music making, which is then listening and taking your personality sometimes a little bit back, and then to bring it back in, which is the beauty. And that same thing, that we are all together in a boat, sharing everything, the best that we can, to see and to do for the music. And that's the important thing. Because
it's a big paradox. If there is a dictator conductor, how can you have enough empathy to understand the composer? I mean, if your ego and your will to decide everything is so big, you might miss the in-way to the soul of the composer. And I wanted to come back to what we started in the beginning about the political situation. Now, I say there is different influences of religion and society, whatever, on people. And the horror I felt when, at the beginning of the war, people all of a sudden took aim at Russian individuals. Musicians that had statements strongly against the invasion of Ukraine, and who were disinvited of concert. The horror of making this go even worse apart, because the Russian people and the individual can be the most wonderful person. So you cannot generalize. You have to be critical of the whole thing strongly and outspokenly, but please don't make it a, so to say, racial issue, or and this nation is bad, this nation is fantastic. That's always a lie. And now here my father is a minister.
Alles Gute. Vielen, vielen Dank. So wonderful to have you back in Pittsburgh.
We're glad to fill your 2-hour program.
And Maestro, have a wonderful weekend. All the best to you.
Thank you very much.
We hope that you return many times.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.